talk about the border, before we talk about border politics, before we talk about what Biden may do, before we talk about him being weak, we obviously are going to need to look at the news report here in a second. But also something else too, a lot of people are going off about the Supreme Court's ruling, but let me advise you guys really quick. Watch the whole news report first before you guys decide to make an actual decision on how you feel about this, even though obviously the decision was not a favorable one. It's just one decision of what's about to be 3 or 4.
Border, despite a court order saying federal border agents can just cut it down.
Fox 4's Dan Godwin here with more on this escalating power struggle between the state and the federal government. Dan?
And Lauren, Governor Abbott is apparently not overly impressed with the Supreme Court ruling that came down this week. His response has been to put up more razor wire at the border. New video from yesterday shows the Texas Military Department doing just that, beefing up razor wire installations in Eagle Pass along the border southwest of San Antonio. And yet, on Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 5-4 ruling, vacated a lower court decision and gave federal agents the green light to cut and remove the razor wire. The federal government argued its agents need access to patrol the border and help migrants in need, but the state says the wire is essential to security and will discourage risky crossings that happen away from legal entry points. On Tuesday, the White House was asked about the next steps in this dispute.
How quickly does the administration intend to remove all the razor wire that has been set up?
So I don't have the specifics on what the border security is going to do and how they're going to do it. Look, we are certainly glad that the Supreme Court made the decision to vacate the injunction that prevented border security to actually do their jobs, to just laws, and it got in the way.
Governor Abbott, of course, sees things differently. On Wednesday, he issued a statement saying the U.S. Constitution allows the state to defend itself, writing that authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. Tuesday's not the final say on the matter. There's still no decision on the larger lawsuit on the razor wire issue. The Fifth Circuit Court in New Orleans is set to hear arguments on that dispute on February 7th.
We'll discuss the Supreme Court ruling more towards the end of the video, but we have a lot to discuss in this video. With that right there being said, let's go ahead and dive into this.
It stands right now. You might be able to make out behind me. Texas's razor wire is still here inside of Shelby Park. It remains untouched. However, the Biden administration has now warned Texas it has until tomorrow to allow Biden's border agents back into Shelby Park and the ability to remove Texas's razor wire as it sees fit. A federal attorney writes to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Biden administration, ending a temporary restraining order that prohibited Biden's border agents from touching Texas razor wire in and around Shelby Park. The Biden administration goes into detail about the access it wants. It wants access to Shelby Park, also the nearby boat launch and the international.
What is it that has Greg Abbott suddenly tripling down on border security, meaning adding more razor wire? And what is it that has got the current president of the United States, let's just say, being a little bit slow to answer this particular situation, which, by the way, I'm not complaining. I mean, kudos to Greg Abbott for actually trying to secure our border. Definitely a lot more than the current regime is. But, of course, they'll come out here and tell you that he kind of make the situation worse when that isn't exactly the problem. Because, of course, a lot of people, they love to talk about these sanctuary cities. And, of course, we've talked about this on this platform, that these people are actually getting what it is that they actually voted for. But you see, these people at one time, they used to be very, very much in favor of not having sanctuary cities. Just ask your current president.
Would you allow these cities to ignore the federal law regarding the reporting of illegal immigrants and, in fact, provide sanctuary to these immigrants?
The reason the cities ignore the federal law is the fact that there is no funding at the federal level to provide for the kind of enforcement at the federal level you need. Pick up the New York Times today. There's a city not far across the river from my state. that imposed similar sanctions. And what they found out is, as a consequence of that, their city went in the dumps, in the dumpster. Stores started closing. Everything started to happen. And they changed the policy. Part of the problem is you have to have a federal government that can enforce laws. This administration...
This right here was the 2007 Democratic national primary where Joe Biden basically told you that he did not want any more sanctuary cities, that these areas go to crap. And then you've got, how do I say this? You've got the guy that he would eventually work for talking about border security.
We all agree on the need to better secure the border and to punish employers who choose to hire illegal immigrants. We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law.
Even some moats and alligators and stuff talked about. This situation is obviously out of hand. It's been out of hand for a while. Now, before we go any further and talk about this, and before I show you another Democrat politician talking about, let's just say the current plan, because these people obviously don't really care, because the truth be told is that the border is used as a political football rather than what it needs to be used for, meaning that it needs to actually be secure. All you got to do is go back to Bill Clinton's 1996 State of the Union address where he talked about border security, and then he would later on blame the Texas Republicans, saying that they did not want an actual border. But here we are once again talking about the border politics, and of course, Tim Pool's favorite phrase, civil war. Now, back in 2007, this right here was Joe Biden's second presidential run. He ran in 1987, and of course in 1987 when he ran, he had to drop out very early after being caught copying Neil Kinnock's famous speech, which I'll probably leave a link in the description box to that. The thing is, this right here, the border is obviously a political football for these people. Now, before we really and truly get deep in this and see exactly what the hell is going on in this situation, before I tell you exactly what's going to happen as a result of this, I want you to know right now, this will be first of 3 videos on this topic. This video right here will be here on Claymore. This right here talking about the actual situation at hand. The video that will be coming out on Gear Issue 33 on Sunday will be talking about the military response. I'm going to kind of blanket everything here, but of course we're going to be much more detailed in that video on the military itself. And of course we're going to be talking about the morality of the situation, because speaking of that guy who loves this Civil War phrase, he automatically believes that every single Border Patrol agent that is down there needs to be locked up, when in fact it's not that simple. He recently took down a live stream with Jesse Kelly when that topic came up. But there's also a lot more evidence, a lot more things to go off of that, quite frankly, need to be cut apart. Like I said, it's almost like it's Tim Pool W Day, Tim Pool L Day. You got to kind of go through it all. But still, at the same time, a lot of people are taking L's on this topic. Now, the situation involving the U.S. border, as you guys know, we have a lot of illegals coming in. Of course, some of these illegals, and of course, you caught one of them earlier, was basically saying that, hey, look, you have no idea what's coming. I'm going to play that clip for you guys again, because it was another content creator named Nuclear Grifter. Very, very, and I mean very good channel. I advise you guys go check him out too. He talked about this earlier and found some additional information on this person. Once again, this right here is in fact a security concern.
Smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am.
Pretty soon you're going to know who I am, says this poor asylum seeker. Also, he's probably this guy, an Islamic terrorist leader who was imprisoned for 12 years in his own country for attempting to overthrow his government. The Biden regime...
No, it's not just people from South America who are being let in. It's not just people from Mexico who are being let in. It's not just people from Central America being let in. It's people from pretty much everywhere being let in. Now, if you're scared about the possibility of any type of terrorism or anything like that, and obviously your concerns would be valid, because he basically just told you, you will know who I am soon. Probably goes to Chicago and New York or something like that. I just have a feeling that something could, in fact, pop off. So I'm not trying to scare you guys. I'm basically telling you guys to be vigilant. But moving on. The situation involving the border and the situation involving this entire situation, as I've been saying before, I know I'm saying situation a lot, but please bear with me, because I'm obviously going off script. I've been in and out of the doctor's office today, and I'm probably going to be going back a lot, or at least 1 or 2 more days next week. So there's probably going to be some heads ups here soon. The thing is this right here. We all know what the hell's going on here. They want to add congressional districts. They want to add more illegal voters. They want to eventually sign some form of legislation to legalize these people. And of course, people who live in these very, very big cities, they are obviously seeing that this entire situation is not exactly what it is that they think they voted for, when in reality they did. You're starting to see the true, we don't want to assimilate thing, the true racism thing. That's actually starting to come out. Just not in my yard. Keep them over there. There's an entire thing. This entire thing, that's exactly what it's actually really truly about. But we'll talk about that when it gets to the morality video, okay? The situation is this right here. There's a piece of, not legislation, but there's an actual bill. I wouldn't call it legislation because this was not one of these ones that needs 60 votes to do. It's just a regular spending bill. There's a bill right now that's sitting in the United States Senate. And that bill, and of course a lot of people are blaming the former president, was roll mittens here.
Do you think this is what he wants, the issue, Donald Trump? This is what he's doing?
I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump. And the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling. But the reality is that we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of
we're causing this entire situation to collapse. But what Mittens does not want to tell you is that this particular bill, as Ted Cruz will describe for you guys here in a second, included a provision to allow 5,000 more illegals to enter the country every day. It's a crap bill. You obviously would not sign this bill, so therefore it's best just to go ahead and put razor wire down there and close this thing up. But let me let Ted explain.
Humanitarian disaster. And Democrats don't care. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into this country. Alejandro Mayorkas didn't even know how many had died because he didn't care. When I brought 19 senators down to the border, we saw a man who had drowned floating in the Rio Grande. Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands upon thousands of children were brutalized and sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats don't care. Do not give a damn. Now, you may say, oh, come on, that's harsh. They care. They care. Somewhere in their hearts, they care about all the people suffering and dying. Baloney. Because if they cared, they would stop it. If you cared about the children being raped at the border, you would say no more. When Joe Biden came in, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. He inherited success, and he deliberately broke it. Democrats want these open borders. And this bill, this mysterious bill, that is buried down in the basement of Chuck Schumer's office. All of you have a living as reporters. Ask yourself, why have you not read the text of the bill? There's a reason. As bad as we think the bill is, I promise you it's worse. The people pushing this deal knew, no, if the American people knew what was in it, they would be against it. This supplemental bill is a kamikaze plane in a box canyon with no exit, headed for a train wreck. If you look at this bill, the bill is not designed to fix this problem. By the way, the single greatest national security threat to America, this right here. I think the odds of a major terrorist attack in the United States are higher today than they've been any time since September 11th. You know what? In that spike, how many Hamas terrorists are there? How many Hezbollah terrorists are there? And what are we going to say when they carry out an attack here like October 7th in Israel? This bill is not designed to fix the problem.
By the way, has kind of won me back over. So the only thing that Texas Governor Greg Abbott is doing is simply his job. Now, really quick, I didn't really comment on this before. I didn't really go much into detail, but I'm going to go into it now. 25 separate governors, 25 separate state governors. Now, my home state of North Carolina, we have we have a very, very Republican legislative body. Same thing in the state of Kentucky, but we both have Democrat governors. So obviously they're not going to send the National Guard there. But 25 Republican states have practically called Joe Biden's bluff. They have practically said, look, dude, we got to secure this border. We're kind of on the side here. Of course, you had former President Trump. He posted the Truth Social about it. You guys are seeing the posts as I'm talking. Basically saying, look, I stand with Texas, okay? This situation has gotten completely and totally out of hand. Truth be told is the current administration, the current president, in a lot of ways, he's guilty of treason or sedition, whichever one you might want to go. We'll probably do a video explaining the difference at a later date. Probably won't take much. It probably won't take long to actually explain because this situation definitely looks like one of the two. this guy obviously is violating his oath. He's allowing an invasion to the nation, and obviously we've got security problems, potential terrorism problems, and I already know that somebody's going to come here and say, oh my God, he's Islamic phobic. Well, I hate to tell you this, but it's not just those who we perceive or believe may be Islamist extremists. It's also the people that are being let in that are not Islamic extremists. It's also people that are coming from certain sections of Africa. It's also people that are coming in from other nations that we quite frankly have not vetted. And of course, we're also letting in some people who could actually be cartel affiliated. So obviously, we've got a lot of problems at this moment in time. But of course, we'll just let the guy who loves the phrase civil war go ahead and kind of run through it a little bit here.
To our good friend Vosh, far leftist, extremist, communist. He says, a constitutional crisis being employed for political theater. If Biden doesn't put a stop to this, it will be a sign of incredible weakness and an invitation for lawlessness from other Republican governors. I appreciate statements like this, and I encourage people to share these statements. Ian Crossland was talking about how he went to his parents. They're fairly normies, he describes them. He says they watch MSNBC, and they were shocked over the immigration issue. And he talked to them, they said it's a disaster, it's a catastrophe. You see, Vosh is a communist, and his intention is the destruction of this country, the fabric of this country. This is why, I mean, they support Palestine. They hate Israel. You don't have to, I'm not saying that every single person who does wants to destroy the United States, but it is a component in a bigger picture of people who hate the United States and want to see it destroyed. Now, to be fair, I understand there are certainly some people who love this country, want to see its borders enforced and are isolationist and don't like what Israel is doing. I don't want to get into all of that debate. But Vosh typically takes the stance, anything destructive to the United States' interests is a good thing. Right now, he's lying. A constitutional crisis being employed for political theater, as if to imply that Greg Abbott has no real reason to try and enforce border laws. Okay, well, New York's complaining about it. Chicago is complaining about it. Texas is complaining about it. Florida is. All these other states. They're all taking this crisis seriously as it is causing harm. Chicago is putting illegal immigrants in the airport. Many airports are now housing illegal immigrants. In Chicago, they proposed building internment camps. That's right. And there was uproar, and so they canceled the project. When you have a Democrat mayor saying we're going to have to build a concentration camp for illegal criminal aliens, pretty sure it's not theater when someone says this must stop. The reason Vosh says this, he wants the crisis to happen. He wants the country to be ripped apart. Joe Biden is in violation of the law. There's no question. Crossing the border illegally is a crime. These people must be detained or repelled. In fact, in Texas, they've already drafted and signed a law asserting it is illegal to do this, despite the fact it's already federally illegal. Customs and border agents are committing crimes. They're in violation of federal law. They don't care. Lawlessness is what Joe Biden is doing. But I appreciate this tweet from Vosh because you show this to a regular normie or a default liberal watching MSNBC, and this helps expose what the left really is. They want this crisis. They want it to get...
Vosh, of course, preaches anti-Americanism all the time. Probably one of the worst socialist scriptures ever, which is funny because he brags about the amount of money he makes. So he's really secretly a capitalist, even though he preaches socialism, and he preaches for a socialist revolution, a communist revolution that more than likely will never occur. And also at the same time, if it did occur, he would not be fighting in because he's just another fat piece of, I'm not going to say it here, but he's just another fat guy behind a computer. Fact of the matter is this right here. This entire situation, and people are looking at the Supreme Court and saying that they are responsible for this, but Supreme Court did not have to get involved, but we'll break that down a little bit further in a second. This situation would not have gotten the way it was if Joe Biden had simply just secured the border. Greg Abbott wouldn't need to be doing this. Now, about those civilian militias and about, I don't know, the fact that Texas has its own state military system. They have like their own Air National Guard. Yeah, their own state military itself. Biden federalizing, and of course this conversation's already came up, and we'll talk more about what happens with the military. Biden's possibility of him federalizing the actual National Guard itself, the Texas National Guard, is probably going to lead to nothing really at all. The Texas National Guard, obviously these are citizens of the state of Texas. I mean, you don't join the National Guard there unless you're actually a citizen of that said state. They're probably not going to be okay with this, and it could cause an actual mutiny. all the other sources that are being sent from red states, it could in fact cause a mutiny. So I don't think Biden wants to do this, because if he does that, he may lose the actual respect of the military. We'll talk more about that in tomorrow's video that will be on Gear 33, or the video I'll be making tomorrow that I'll be putting out on Sunday. We'll talk more about that there. The thing is this right here, Joe Biden at this moment in time looks extremely weak. And I mean, he looks very weak. That right there is the real truth of this situation. My personal belief is that Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who had until January the 26th, of course, by the time this video comes out, will be January the 27th, he had basically already doubled and tripled down the situation, saying, no, we're going to defend our border. So Greg Abbott's the one who looks pretty well strong. Many people thought this was a bluff, but I really and truly don't think that's the case. I think that Greg Abbott is also playing politics as well, which in this case, I actually agree him doing so, because it's a good way to get the border secure. Go back to that previous bill. 5,000 illegals a day is what you're going to let in. That piece of spending. It's obviously a terrible deal. So obviously the current Republican nominee being concerned about that was obviously valid. It was obviously valid. Fact of the matter is that Joe Biden, if he doesn't do anything, he's going to look extremely weak, especially to the radical left. That's about 20% of his base. And he's going to look like he's going too far if he federalizes the National Guard and actually goes after Texas. I don't think he'll do that, especially given the fact that Customs, Border, and Patrol agents are not exactly what we say removing the razor wire. A lot of these people know what the hell is going on down there. There's a bunch of BS. They know it's wrong. It's another one of the reasons why it is I think the question of morality does in fact need to be answered. But of course, we'll handle that in the video that will come out on Sunday on this channel. The thing is this right here, Joe Biden right now looks extremely weak, but what will Joe Biden do? Let me answer that by simply going back to the Supreme Court and exactly the actual ruling. A lot of conservatives right now are hitting Amy Coney Barrett. She's a Trump appointee because she voted in favor, or basically voted and said that, look, the state of Texas, the federal government can remove the razor wire. What a lot of people did not seem to realize is, going back to the initial news report that came out, was this is actually one ruling of a broader ruling, so we really truly don't know. Greg Abbott is, because it's a border state, he's asserting the supremacy clause, so it's very, very possible that in the next ruling it may be a favorable one. I think we might want to wait just a little bit longer before we decide to say that these justices actually betrayed us. We already expected the three liberals to do so. I was actually surprised that Kavanaugh stood up on this one, but we're not entirely sure. We know Roberts is going to screw us, but we're not entirely sure just yet. So I think we might want to hold up just a little bit longer before we start screaming bloody murder at the Supreme Court. But let me go ahead and end the video on this note right here. This right here is what Joe Biden's probably going to do. This right here is what I expect him to do. I expect him to capitulate at some point in time, because it's an election year. Or maybe he won't, but still at the same time, if he capitulates. Remember, Joe Biden is nothing more than just an angrier version of Jimmy Carter. He's very, very weak. He is full of bluster. He runs his mouth a lot, but he doesn't really do anything. The thing is this right here, what I expect him to do is actually do the very, very bare minimum, maybe shut down the border for a little while. It won't stay closed. But then he'll come out and he'll tell his base of non-player characters. He will tell them that, yeah, I fixed the border. That right there is what he'll do. And of course, they'll just believe it. However, there's about 65 to 70% of the American people that obviously won't believe it. And of course, seeing how it is that you've got this little oil thing, this little energy thing that is looking a lot like maybe Biden plans on punishing Texas by punishing the American people, which is actually what he'd be punishing, because the energy costs will just go through the roof. I say this right here is political self-deletion. I have to say that right now because of the way the algorithm works. That right there is more than likely what's going to occur. So hats off to Greg Abbott. I salute you, man. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, share the video. Please give me you guys' thoughts in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.